Today, we're diving into one of the most pivotal campaigns of the entire American Civil War. This was a military operation so decisive it might have single-handedly secured a presidential election and really sealed the fate of the Confederacy.
Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Could a single military campaign actually decide a presidential election? Well, back in the summer and fall of 1864, the answer to that question was everything. You had the Union and the Confederacy both just completely exhausted, and the future of the entire nation was hanging not just on what happened on the battlefield, but on the ballot box.
So the year is 1864, and by pretty much every metric, the Confederacy is dying. Its armies are in rags, its economy is collapsing, but it has one final, desperate hope.
And that hope, it wasn't some brilliant general or a new army. It was an election. You see, the thinking was, if the South could just hold out until November 8th, until that presidential election, maybe, just maybe, a war-weary North would finally vote Abraham Lincoln out of office. And a new president, probably running on a peace platform, well, that could mean a settlement, and with it, Confederate independence.
But the Union's new top general, Ulysses S. Grant, had other plans. His grand strategy was brutally simple: apply pressure everywhere, all at the same time. The two main targets were General Robert E. Lee in Virginia and the industrial and railroad hub of Atlanta, Georgia. And that last job, he gave it to his most trusted guy, William Tecumseh Sherman.
So the Atlanta campaign itself, it quickly turns into this high-stakes chess match between two brilliant commanders who could not have been more different from each other.
Okay, so on one side you've got Sherman, and he has this massive army, more than a 2-to-1 advantage. His whole strategy is to use that size to constantly flank his opponent, to get around him. And then on the other side, you've got the Confederate commander, Joseph E. Johnston. Now this guy was a master of defensive warfare. He knew he couldn't win a straight-up fight, so his plan was to delay, to make Sherman's army bleed for every single step, and most importantly, to deny the Union a clear win before that critical November election.
The campaign kicked off in May of '64, and it wasn't with some massive single battle. Nope, it was more like a strategic cat-and-mouse game through the really rugged mountains of northern Georgia.
And for 2 long months, this was the rhythm of the war. Sherman would use his numbers to try to get around Johnston's flank, but Johnston, who was brilliant at this, would see it coming and skillfully pull back to another defensive position he'd already picked out. And with every mile Sherman pushed forward, his own supply lines back to Nashville got longer and way more exposed. Johnston's strategy, well, it was working.
But here's the thing. Just as Johnston was getting ready to spring his best-planned ambush of the whole campaign near a place called Peachtree Creek, his boss, the Confederate President Jefferson Davis, was getting really impatient back in Richmond. He was just tired of trading land for time.
And this right here, this is where the entire campaign just flips on its head. On July 17th, Davis fires the cautious Johnston and replaces him with John Bell Hood, a general known for one thing and one thing only: reckless aggression. Sherman himself was actually pretty happy about the change. He knew that while Johnston would bleed him slowly, Hood would give him a big, decisive fight.
And the impact of that decision was immediate and, frankly, catastrophic. I mean, look at this. In 2 months of fighting under Johnston, the Confederate Army lost about 10,000 men. In his first 10 days of command, Hood lost almost 11,000 men. It was an absolute disaster for the Confederacy.
So Hood's totally predictable aggression, it played right into Sherman's hands. It broke the stalemate, and it set the stage for the campaign's bloody finale.
Instead of, defending the city's incredible fortifications, Hood just launched a series of desperate frontal assaults at Peachtree Creek, then the Battle of Atlanta, then Ezra Church. And each time his men charged straight into heavily fortified Union positions, and each time his army was just shattered.
So, with Hood's army now basically crippled, unable to really fight back, Sherman made his final move. He pulled most of his army out of their trenches, swung way around the city, and cut the last railroad line that was supplying Atlanta. The city was now totally isolated. Its fall was just a matter of time.
On September 2nd, Sherman sent what is now a super famous telegram to President Lincoln. It just said, "Atlanta is ours and fairly won." That news shot across the North like a bolt of lightning. Morale, which had been in the gutter because of all the casualties in Virginia, just soared.
This one military victory was the political knockout punch that Lincoln desperately needed.
The Peace Democrats, who'd been getting stronger and stronger, were suddenly sidelined. Lincoln won re-election in a landslide, and with that, the North's will to see the war all the way through to the end was locked in.
But Sherman, oh, he wasn't done, not by a long shot. With Atlanta taken care of and Hood leading his battered army on this kind of bizarre, doomed campaign up into Tennessee, Sherman set his sights on a new, more psychological goal. He was going to break the South's will to fight.
So on November 15th, after burning everything of military value in Atlanta, Sherman famously cut his own supply lines and marched 62,000 veteran troops straight into the heart of Georgia, heading for the coast. And you have to picture this. His army wasn't in some neat little column. They were advancing on a front that was sometimes up to 50 miles across. They were living off the land, like a giant swarm of blue locusts sent to destroy not just armies, but the whole economic and psychological ability of the Confederacy to even wage war.
This was the infamous March to the Sea, a campaign of total war. Railroads, the lifeblood of the Confederacy, were systematically ripped from the ground. Plantations that fed the armies were burned. Millions of tons of food were taken. The whole thing was designed to prove to the Southern people that their government could not protect them.
The march finally ended just before Christmas in 1864, when Sherman's army popped out of the interior and captured the port city of Savannah. And in a pretty cheeky move, he offered it to President Lincoln as a Christmas gift. The Confederacy was now effectively cut in two, its last supply hub just gone. And all of this leaves us with this one final question. Sherman's campaign in Georgia showed a brutal, but really effective truth. War isn't just about winning battles. His march is still controversial, of course, but its impact was undeniable. And it raises a question that strategists still debate today. In a fight for national survival, is breaking an enemy's will to resist just as important as destroying their army on the field?